What's going on, everybody? Ryan Miner here of the Face Off Sports Network, and I'm here to bring you Week 14 Panic Meter. But first, let's do a quick recap on Week 13 and look at some players that I said I'm kind of panicking on and see how they turned out. And I'm going to start from Thursday night's game of the Miami Dolphins against the Green Bay Packers, where I had Jaden Reed there as a panic. And yeah, Jaden Reed, wasn't getting as much of a target share. Started out good against the San Francisco 49ers, like I said, but, didn't quite finish off well. This week, he was number 2 in targets behind Tucker Kraft with 6. Tucker Kraft had 7, but Reed only turned that in for 3 receptions for 24 yards. The bonus side of that, he had 2 receiving touchdowns. Good for 19 fantasy points. You can't complain about that, but the yardage just wasn't there. The yardage was there for Tucker Kraft, Josh Jacobs, and Christian Watson. Everyone else had 30 or less. So going forward, it's still going to be iffy. We're still waiting to hear the stats on Romeo Doubs, but seeing that he was number 2 on the target share, it's very good to see, especially with Romeo Doubs out. But we'll see if this continues to happen because Christian Watson is starting to get healthier. On the other side of the ball, Tyreek Hill. And Tyreek Hill has not been producing as of late. We were struggling. I gave the whole yardage viewpoint of what he needed to basically get back to his 1,700 yards, his receptions, his total of everything. And it was astronomical. He's going to need basically 12 catches, 204 yards, 1.6 touchdowns every game. It was going to be tough. But, this game, he actually lucked out, 6 receptions, 83 yards, and a touchdown. The touchdown was, fortunately, a nice bounce to him because that's actually supposed to go to Jonnu Smith, and Jonnu Smith just dominated this game once again. So, but to see that, Tyreek Hill bounced back, got the touchdown, 83 receiving yards off 6 receptions, that's great for us. We're looking at 20-plus fantasy points on that. Good PPR day on that. So, I'm still iffy about this receiving game, not really passing game, but the receiving game, just because, it's just the way you don't know exactly what it's really going to go through. It's not going to be Tyreek Hill. It's not Jalen Waddle. Those are both kind of busts. It's really kind of like Jonnu Smith is the main focal point of this offense, followed by Devon Achane. So outside of that, you're probably still going to start Tyreek Hill, but I would not hesitate and not look at you any differently if you didn't. But I can see many of them going back, putting it back in the lineups with their good graces. Let's see. Ramondre Stevenson. Nice bounce back game for him as he had 18 rush attempts for 73 yards. Once again, held out of the end zone. No touchdowns. But, was able to actually work in the receiving game. You had for, 3 for 21 yards. And that's one thing that was definitely one of the things I looked at for him. It was the upside of, we liked him a lot a couple years ago because of his receiving upside. And if he doesn't get the reception, it doesn't really help. So he's definitely a nice PPR back. But, he's weak. So we'll see how this week of rest comes in. We'll look at it next week, as the schedule comes out for the fantasy football playoffs. And then finally, my last player, I was panicking on him. Now he's out for the season, and that's Christian McCaffrey. And the game was starting out so well for him. He had, let me see here real quick, if I can pull it up real fast. He had, oh man, I am stumbling here. Let me find the score real quick for you guys. That way I can at least see what was going on. Let me get back with you on that. But he looked like vintage Christian McCaffrey. That was what I'm gonna say. Going out there, and it started out great, and then he got up over-ended. Okay, no big deal. He got up over-ended. He did his typical flex. He looked great. Ready for the next play. Next play gets pitched to the right, and then he just slides down, takes himself out of the play. It looked like maybe a cramp. No one could tell, but come to find out, he has a sprained PCL, out for the season. But prior to that, man, 7 rush attempts, 53 yards, and then also, 2 receptions for another 14. He was definitely looking like the Christian McCaffrey. The downside of this too is if you had Jordan Mason, he's also out for the time being with a high ankle sprain, so he's on IR also. So the lead back here now is Isaiah Guerrero, great rookie. Let's see if he can actually take over the RB1 thing role here. If he can, that's great because we're doing whatever we can on the waiver wire to try to bounce back, get back in the good graces, try to make our fantasy football playoffs, as this is the majority of the league's final weeks to try to push. So if Isaiah Guerrero's there, grab him. He had a touchdown last night. Wasn't very efficient with his carries, but if you were watching that game yesterday, that field and all that snow definitely took a toll on it. But James Cook would tell you otherwise, along with Ray Davis too. But that's enough of Week 13 recap. Let's get you ready for Week 14, as we will be talking about these players. And for some reason, every time I do these videos, I always end up coughing. So this time, I got water ready. Excuse me, trying to not cough this time. But we'll kick it off. My first player this week is Aaron Jones. Now you look at his fantasy score. Jones, was able to get a touchdown, but on the outside of that, ran the ball 5 times for 22 yards. And like I said, was able to get a receiving touchdown. And the receiving touchdown didn't come until late in the game because the Arizona Cardinals were actually dominating the Minnesota Vikings for the longest time. It was like 20-6, I want to say. Minnesota actually scored again, and Arizona tried to do something but couldn't. But also, like, this game kind of gave away to Cam Akers too, just because they both had 4 attempts, and not 4 attempts. I'm sorry. Cam Akers and Aaron Jones both finished with 22 rush yards. Akers did his in 4 attempts. Jones did his in 5. And like I said, Aaron Jones' reception is what definitely helped him. 3 receptions, 6 yards. So you can definitely tell they were using him around the goal line. But, finished with under 10 fantasy points for a running back like this is not something really to look forward to. Like back in week 12, he had a big game. He was over 20 fantasy points and has now had 13 PPR points or less in 5 of his last 7 games. Going forward, I'm setting my expectations lower. It's hard to say panic, like, all right, I'm kind of panicking because I have to start him still. But I'm going to view him more as a back-end RB2, especially this coming week. He's got the Atlanta Falcons, who just held the Chargers running back all the 56 yards. Yeah, Kamani Vidal. Yes, it was Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards sucks. But it's an uphill battle, and you're going to have to look at that at that point, at least. So I have lower expectations. Expect RB2 numbers once again. Better than what this week was. We'll hopefully get around 13. Be nice maybe get 14. Get off that trend. Possibly 15. We'll see how this goes. But it's a panic that you're going to look into, especially like as I said about we're pushing for that playoff run. So your heart might be racing. You're going to want the touchdown. You're going to want the touches. So let's please hope for that. But one player I am definitely really irritated with, and that is Kenneth Walker himself. Now here, we're nearing the end of the season, like I've been saying already. And Kenneth Walker, in the majority of my leagues, I've drafted him as my RB1. And, looked great that first week, dominated, 20-plus fantasy points. True RB1 performance. And then, once again, week 4 against the Detroit Lions, 3 touchdown performance. It was just like, man, this guy's got it all. I'm ready for it. I'm here for it. But since then, he's only had 1 game over 100 yards for the season. That is not the Kenneth Walker we all drafted. If he doesn't score, or if you're not in a PPR league, he's an RB2 at best, and that's what sucks because, like I said, a lot of people did the late round running back. This was your RB1 because you were going wide receiver heavy. How'd that work out? Not so good for a lot of the teams. And then this week, he gets what Aaron Jones just had. The Arizona Cardinals, who basically wrapped him up. This is a tougher defense than many expected, especially on the running side. So once again, just like Aaron Jones, I have my expectations set low for Kenneth Walker. But based on the teams that are on bye, we have the Ravens, the Texans, the Colts, the Broncos, Commanders, and Patriots. 6 teams. You're starting him as an RB2. Hope for the best. Lower expectations. Hope for the end zone. On the other side of it, though, his teammate, DK Metcalf, is another one I'm panicking on. And what happened to DK Metcalf, late in the season? It's safe to say that, Jackson Smith-Njigba is moving into the wide receiver 1 slot of this team. And, we all kind of expected that. It just, took longer than expected, as many as saw him as the number 1 wide receiver out of the 2023 draft class. But, coming back from knee injury, DK Metcalf he just hasn't looked the same. Prior to that, he was dominating. But, 6 teams on bye, as I've already said. It's going to be hard to start DK Metcalf, but it's going to be also harder to bench him just because of what volatility is out there right now. This week you'll be starting him as a wide receiver 2, but outside of that, wide receiver 3, just because of what he is not able to do anymore. And here's a repeat offender. One guy I had as my wide receiver 1. You probably know who he is. It is CeeDee Lamb. No, I'm not excited about CeeDee Lamb. It's not the performance that he did. It's the re-aggravation of that AC joint on the same exact shoulder. And it pulled him out. It was not a great game. Okay, the Cowboys won, but what are the Cowboys really playing for right now? If you want to, is it better just to sit your star wide receiver, let him heal, get him ready for next season? I'm starting to think that, just because he only has 2 games of over 20 fantasy points. But, from a fantasy perspective, you want him to play. Reality perspective, you don't really want to put him out there any longer, because you're not playing for a playoff spot. You're just playing just for draft position now. Could they get a top 10 pick? It's tough to say. This team's falling apart. It needs a lot of work. It needs a lot of help right now. And if CeeDee Lamb's playing, you're starting him. But the panic's high because it's just the namesake now. It's like, okay, will you get me 6 points? Will you get me 12 points? I'll be happy with whatever he gets me. But at the same time, you have to kind of lower expectations once again and kind of just hope for the best. And then finally, oh my God, this one player. I am so done with Kyle Pitts. Done with Kyle Pitts. I do not understand how he even played this year. I was trying to be high on Kyle Pitts, thinking that, Arthur Smith's gone. We'll get someone that's actually real, that could actually know how to use a tight end. And that just hasn't happened. Was it Jonnu Smith that screwed up Kyle Pitts? No. Actually letting go of Jonnu Smith was actually bad, because looking at PPR standings right now, Jonnu Smith is a tight end 5. Kyle Pitts, tight end 14. Also, what did Kyle Pitts do this week? Nothing. He gave you a goose egg. Definitely not worth it anymore. I'm done with Kyle Pitts. I won't be surprised a lot of people start dropping him just because of the performance he's been doing lately, because he's not really worth it. He's just more of a streaming tight end. He was behind players like Taysom Hill, who's now out for the season with a torn ACL. Pratt Freiermuth, Cole Kmet, Tucker Kraft, Hunter Henry's ahead of him. Kate Otten, even though we were saying on Face Off Sports Network a couple days ago and start Kate Otten, he had a down game. It happens. Zach Ertz. You look at these players, a lot of these players I'm mentioning are waiver wire pickups. We wasted a lot of our own picks on Kyle Pitts this season, thinking this is going to be the season with Kirk Cousins and company, and then this offense was going to cook. And it just hasn't. Excuse me. I don't understand why I always cough every time I'm on here. So, with Kyle Pitts, guys, I'm done. It's over. It's time to move on. Drop him. And there's no reason to even panic on it. Just drop it and say, I'm never drafting Kyle Pitts again. Well, that's going to do it for this week's Panic Meter. Let's get you guys prepared for the fantasy football playoffs, and we'll bring you back here again next week. I'm Ryan Miner. We'll talk to you soon.